Okay, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Good evening and welcome to Device Alliance's 5th Annual Women in Medtech event. My name is Joanne Lee. I am the chair of the Young Professionals Committee for Device Alliance. Device Alliance is the only nonprofit organization focused exclusively on promoting the vitality of SoCal's medical device community. We're a tight-knit group of professionals who exchange ideas and insights and give each member a competitive edge in the marketplace. Our annual women's event spotlights accomplished women who have inspired and motivated those around them for greatness. We have an amazing keynote and panel discussion tonight, but first, I want to thank our sponsors, our platinum, gold, and silver sponsors, as well as thank Matt from Pro Presence for producing tonight's virtual event. And this event would not be possible without their generous support, so thank you so much. Before we get started, I'd like to also announce our upcoming July 15th in-person networking event hosted at Access Research and Technology in Irvine, California. If you are interested in attending, want to build new connections or reconnect in person, please go to our website at devicealliance.org to RSVP. We're excited to get back together again. That's all that I have for housekeeping, so we can go ahead and move forward with our event. It's certainly an understatement to say that we've all had a difficult 2020 and beginning of 2021. But as we reflect and continue to move forward with the knowledge that we have today, a key component that continues to illuminate a path forward in times of uncertainty and difficulty are our communities, network, and ultimately our social capital. Tonight, our event focuses on defining what social capital is, and we'll dive into the lived experiences of how women and people in general can effectively generate and leverage social capital for career, life, and ultimately business success. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Alessandra Wall as our keynote speaker. Dr. Wall is a clinical psychologist and founder of Life in Focus Coaching. Her mission is to help women craft deeply satisfying careers and teach companies how to retain and attract exceptional women. Dr. Wall has worked with thousands of women throughout her many speaking events and executive coaching. She continues to empower women by helping them articulate their value, build confidence, and be compelling and powerful in whatever role they choose to pursue. She joins us again this year as our moderator and keynote speaker. If there's anyone who has seen and heard from the lived experiences of women in the tech and STEM industry within the last year, Dr. Wall certainly has a unique position to be in. Please join me in welcoming tonight's keynote speaker, Dr. Alessandra Wall.
I am very excited to get this started. And here's how I'd like to get this started. I would like you to think about the last time you hired a true expert. Think about a plumber, an electrician, a hairdresser, even your dentist. And I want you to think about how you chose who to work with. If you're like most people, you tapped into your network, right? You asked friends, colleagues, neighbors, family who they knew and liked. And chances are you didn't rigorously vet the recommendations you were given. Assuming basic competency, your choice was probably more heavily influenced by how much you trusted the source of the recommendation than based on the professional's training and experience. And the thing is, that's not just how you hire your next handyman. That's how most of us initially select CEOs and board members, managers to lead our teams, and businesses to partner with. It might even be the way you were chosen for your current position. And that's because humans are social animals. You are hardwired to support, elevate, promote all the people you know and trust, the people inside your circle. But I don't want you to take my word for it. Instead, I want you to think about the last person you helped out professionally. Maybe you introduced them to a business partner, or you connected them with a client. Maybe you decided to take them on as a mentee, or you shared a job opportunity with them. Whatever that support looked like, I'm really curious. Did you help them simply because of their qualifications, or because you also knew, liked, and trusted them? Or maybe you understood that by helping them today, you might secure their help in the future. So this is a real question, and there is a chat. And what I'd love for you to do is to share your answer in the chat. Really think about this. Who's the last person you helped out professionally? What made you decide to help them out? So here's the thing. The trust that you build in relationships can be leveraged by all parties within that relationship to create really significant and meaningful opportunities. This is true with personal relationships, and it's true with professional relationships, and it is what we call social capital. Social capital basically refers to all the potential opportunities that come from the relationships you build and nurture in your networks. And social capital is the currency of success. Because at the end of the day, it's not just enough to work hard or to be the most skilled, educated, or senior person in the room. If we want to succeed professionally, we're going to need to tap into our network's social capital to access the most valuable opportunities out there. So just like you didn't choose your hairdresser because they attended the best cosmetology program out there, you are not going to be chosen for opportunities just because you're the hardest working, smartest, or most educated woman in the room, excuse me. So, why am I bringing this up today? When Scott and Joanne approached me about this year's event, they were hoping to address two major topics. First, how has the pandemic uniquely affected women and women in medical devices specifically? And secondly, what are some lessons that we've learned from this experience that we can share to support and elevate women in med devices? So I'll be honest, you are actually far better positioned than me to answer the first question as it applies to women in medical device. But I'm certain that if I were to overhear private conversations on the topic, what we'd find out is for some, the pandemic has been professionally devastating, whereas for others, it's actually been a boon. Now, with regards to women in general, we know that during the pandemic, women lost jobs at a much higher rate than men, and that even those of us who kept our jobs reported higher levels of stress and disruption. Women lost a net 5.4 million jobs during this current recession, and a majority of those affected are actually women of color. To date, there's still 1.8 million fewer women in the labor force than there were pre-pandemic. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in December 2020, employers cut 140,000 jobs. And it's important to realize that Black, Latinx, and Asian women accounted for 100% of that job loss. And the thing is, it's not over. One thing that the pandemic has highlighted is that the burden of female caretakers is real and that there's a need to restructure and revise our work practices. 1 in 4 women today are still considering leaving the workforce or downshifting their careers. And I don't think I'm stretching too far by assuming that some of those women are either in attendance today or going to be listening to this recording. But as you can see, and as I said, I know more about the general numbers than about the impact that the pandemic has had on the women who are with us today. And since I am genuinely curious, I'd love to hear from you. Whether you're male, female, or identify as other, I want to know what you've been seeing. How has the pandemic affected the women that you know in medical devices? And again, I am going to invite you to share your insights and your stories and your experience and give us a more accurate representation of what's going on by typing what you've been seeing or sharing what you've been seeing in the chat. Now, while you do that, let's go on to the second question. What can we do to support women and women-owned businesses post-pandemic? Well, here again, my advice actually isn't sector specific. It's not even gender specific, but it is born from dozens, if not hundreds of conversations that I've had with executives and business owners, individual contributors, managers, private industry professionals, and academic scientists, most of whom are women and many of whom are men. It's based on experiences that I've had as a professional woman and a business owner pre, peri, and now entering the post-pandemic phase. And the advice I'm about to give is something that I've tried with the women in bio, in tech, and finance that I have the honor of working with. So what's the advice? Well, in my experience, one of the single most important things that we can do as smart, accomplished, hardworking, and ambitious women in order to thrive professionally is to build and leverage our social networks. Building a strong professional network isn't something that's nice to do. It really, really is a professional must-do. It's something that deserves to be addressed like any other significant professional endeavor. And it's something that you need to approach strategically because it is extremely time consuming, but the payoff is huge. Take the example of Neela. So Neela is an engineer I worked with who actually works in the finance sector. She is passionate about tech, and she has this knack for finding tech companies to invest in that others miss. When I met Neela, she wasn't being given the chance to use her passion and her eyes for those diamonds in the rough in the company that she'd been working for 15 years. This, despite asking often, trust me, and providing evidence of her talent. After years of trying and patiently waiting, Neela eventually decided to move on. So she got her resume in order, did some research, and set out to look for a job. For 1, then 2 years, she applied whenever a relevant posting popped up. But unfortunately, nothing came of it. When we finally met and started examining the problem together, 2 things jumped out for us. Despite all her brilliance, Neela actually was terrible at articulating her value in a clear and compelling way. But to be honest, even if she'd been really brilliant at it, she wasn't building or leveraging her professional network at all. So unless she was responding to a job posting that other dozens, if not hundreds of people were responding to, there was no way for her to put out there what she was about and how talented she was. So first, we got a really clear value articulation for her. But then the magic happened, because then Neela started first growing and then nurturing her professional network. Within 6 months, she got 2 amazing opportunities. And it's important to note that both opportunities came from casual conversations that occurred while she was networking with other professionals. Each of those opportunities led to extensive interviews and finally a dream job. So I'm happy to say that as of June 1st, she shifted companies, and she is allowed to apply all her talent doing the things that she really loves, and all of it with a pay raise. The thing is, Neela's talent and her level of education, her value, none of those things grew in the 6 months that she was working on building her social capital. What changed was that she suddenly knew and was known by a much larger group of people. People who liked, understood, and trusted her. People who she was comfortable asking for advice and support from, and people who in turn were more than happy to connect her with the right opportunities. And that, folks, honestly is the power of social capital. And the thing is, Neela's story is but one story. I could talk to you about Kathy or Savannah or Shweta or Christina, all women, all leveraging their social capital to their benefit. We could talk about the women founders in the room who have amazing ideas and services and products, who are dreaming of accessing inner circles of venture capitalists and investors so that their ideas can be funded and their dreams can become realities. Or even, honestly and personally, how a year of coffee dates in 2019 positioned my own company noteworthy, not just to survive, but to thrive in 2020. I want to come back to the central idea. Social capital isn't just nice. It is absolutely necessary. As professional women, as female founders, as academics and innovators, you need to understand that your professional network is one of your most valuable resources. You have to be willing to take time away from your work to meet with people within and outside your industries. You need to build meaningful relationships. You want to be able to provide value and support the people in those relationships. And very important, and something we want to talk about with our panel today, you have to be willing and ready to ask them for support and help that they're uniquely suited to give you. This has never been more important than right now, because anybody who's watching any kind of news knows that we are seeing an unprecedented number of people leaving the workforce because they're unhappy. And we're seeing a greater number of women either choosing to leave or being forced out of their jobs. People are looking for opportunities. You might be looking for an opportunity. The opportunity to work for a company that values you and will give you the flexibility and responsibility you deserve. The opportunity to hire the best and the brightest out there to complement your teams and push your company to success. The opportunity to be connected with the right investors to get your startup off the runway and flying high. And the thing is, you might be the best at what you do, but you also might be the best kept secret. And if you have dreams, or ambitions, a mission to make the world better or to disrupt your industry, being a best kept secret is absolutely not the way to make those things happen. So social capital is really the currency of your success. And as women, we need to be okay with both building and leveraging it. So in about 30 seconds, we're going to hear from our talented panel. But while we talk together about the power and challenge of building strong professional networks, I'm going to make a call to action to everybody who is here today and everybody who is watching this. I would like you to think about one woman in your circle, one woman who you could support, who you could elevate, who you could help out. And I'd like you right now to grab a sheet of paper, to grab your phone if that's what you're using to keep notes, and to write her name down, and to make a commitment to reach out to her tomorrow. And when you reach out to her by text, by email, by direct message, via phone call, I'd like you to find out what kind of help she needs from you. And then if possible, I'd like you to give it to her. Let's use our social capital to help the women in the medical device sector access the opportunities that they deserve, build the companies that will revolutionize your industry, and make your industry, but also your economy and the world a stronger, better place. Okay, ladies, are you ready for a conversation about social capital?
Yes, we are. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Wall. All right, so Dr. Wall will continue with us tonight as our moderator. And so we'll now go ahead and transition into our panel discussion. Joining us tonight is Monica Pleasant. Monica is a strategic global human resources leader with more than 10 years of experience in the field. She is passionate about developing talent so that they can reach their full potential and partnering with leaders to successfully achieve their business goals. Currently, Monica is the HR director of Medtronic, and she is a board member and membership chair at the National Human Resources Association. We've had Monica join us at our young professional events, and she's been inspirational to many of our early career professionals. We're so excited to have you here tonight again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Next, we have Somera. Annalisa has over 20 years of experience working with startups in different capacities, including biomedical research, technology transfer, operations, regulatory affairs, grant consulting, management, just to name a few. Her interest in leading startups stems from OrthoCell Technologies, a medical device company that she co-founded in grad school in 2005. From there, she worked in early stage venture capital and held senior roles in several medical device companies. Today, she is the Chief Executive Officer of Rhaeos, a Northwestern University spinout, developing wearable flow monitoring devices for hydrocephalus. She holds 3 master's degrees in cell biology, business, and public health. We're so excited to have the wealth of knowledge that you have tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, Annalisa.
Happy to be here.
Next, we have Dr. Nadine Hachach-Haram. She is a reconstructive surgeon and entrepreneur. She is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Proximie. Proximie is an award-winning augmented reality healthcare platform for surgeons, and it helps surgeons from around the world connect, perform surgeries, and provide safe surgical care to everyone. It was developed from her clinical expertise in surgery and passion for technology, innovation, and making a difference in the world. The technology is incredibly timely considering recent events, and we are honored to have Dr. Hachach-Haram, who has also spoken at many TED Talks, including TED Women 2017 and multiple TEDx series. She's joining us tonight from London, so thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Lastly, but not least, we have Ayushi Patel. Ayushi earned her biomedical engineering bachelor's from the University of California, Irvine in 2019, so very recent. She is now the co-founder and chief executive officer of CenSyn, a medical device company developing a wireless EEG pen for rapid screening of silent seizures and other medical complications. Her company and technology have earned awards from multiple competitions, including UCI's BIAL Design Competition, Sujal's wins Future at New Venture Competition, and the Elevator Pitch and Values and Ventures Competition. We're excited to hear from you, Ayushi, for being so accomplished at such a young age. And we're very much interested from a young professional perspective to hear what you have to share.
Thank you, Joanne. Happy to be here.
As you can tell, we have a very accomplished panel, and so I'll hand it off to Dr. Wall to moderate the panel discussion, and we'll be back with the Q&A after.
Wonderful. So as is hopefully clear by now, I am very, very passionate about this idea of building, but nearly more importantly, leveraging the social capital that we naturally build. So I am very curious, starting this off, to understand how you have used your social capital in your career or for your businesses. And I am going to start off with Monica. How has social capital served you professionally?
Thank you for asking. And I am also very passionate about this topic. Early in my career, I was very shy, very introverted, and I didn't understand the value of building a network of people that I could rely on to help me get my work done. But over the years, I was working hard, and it wasn't getting recognized. And I was like, why? Why is that the case? And when I was talking with colleagues of mine, like, what does it take to get promoted these days? They told me, well, you need to build a brand, you need to build a reputation amongst the decision makers within your leadership team. You have to get to know each and every one of them and let them see you as a leader who can be promoted. And to a shy, introverted person like me, that's like asking me to climb Mount Everest. Like, what? I've got to build relationships with all these people in order to get promoted and recognized for the hard work. And so it took me years to transform my mindset, to get over my shyness, to get over my introvertedness, and get to a place where I was comfortable with building relationships with people within the organization. But after I was able to get over that hurdle and climb to the top of Mount Everest, it has served me so well to have a network of people that I can call on, network of people that I can also serve and help as well. I would say having this social network has really shaped me into being the HR leader that I am today, because now I'm able to have access to a great deal of information, ideas. It helps build my confidence to be able to interact with other leaders, just great insights that are shared with me, and it allows me to add more value to the teams that I'm on as a result of having that insight and information. So it has just served me tremendously well in my career to now have this professional network that, again, I can rely on. And I'll pause there.
So first of all, I want to say thank you so much. Thank you. So taking notes. But one of the things that I really loved hearing you say is really talking about social capital, not just from the perspective of the power it gives us in terms of networking or connection opportunities, but you brought up a lot of different things, right? Information, ideas, building confidence, your personal growth, right? So really thinking about this idea of, what has been the value of social capital for you in this much broader context. So thank you for that. And I'm wondering from our other panelists, if anybody else would like to, we'll start with raising our hands, like share what their experience has been with leveraging your social capital and how it has benefited you to build relationships, to build these networks, but also to have the courage to ask these networks to support and help you. Ayushi, go ahead.
I guess I can build on Monica's point. So she hit a lot of key notes there. especially information. And the other big one is expanding your perspective. I think that's another very underrated um, idea, that often when you build this social capital, you'll meet people who view the world from a different lens. And maybe your lens is not always the best one to solve a problem or look at an idea. And when you put these two together, you think of newer ideas that bring more creativity to your process. And I agree with Monica. It's very important to show the people who are in the decision-making process about why you're the one they should put their trust to. And it's two ways, right? You also have to communicate it, but they also see your moral compass. And when they do that, that social capital just keeps growing. And that has helped me as an individual to find the right mentors that match my wavelength and help me grow intellectually. But as a startup founder, it's also helped me get the right investors, get the right clinical partnerships, work with doctors, understand their point of view, and then leverage their social capital to help other doctors who might be in the same pain point as well.
Thank you. Well, so I am really curious of this idea of social capital, specifically as it applies to women who are building enterprises, who are building businesses, who have these startups, and how you've leveraged this. So Ayushi, you said among other things, it has given you introductions. I'm wondering, Dr. Hachach-Haram, how has it helped you? And Elisa, you have such a wealth of experience in this space. Like, have you, I mean, is getting the funding, is getting the right people to see what you're doing just about doing the hard work? Or has it also been about knowing the right people who can make introductions for you?
Probably step in and think, when I think about social capital, I think it's a combination of, a network of people that come together that really help you both personally and professionally, and that are instrumental through your evolution. I mean, as you're going through, particularly as a founder or someone who's really disrupting a particular space, there's an evolution. And so you're really trying to grow as an individual, you're trying to break boundaries. And so you're going through these emotional ups and downs of sort of confidence, self-doubt, confidence, self-doubt, and working through that. And so really thinking through, who are those key individuals around you that are going to, there's a reciprocity, it's elements of those that are going to provide the support, the mentorship, and the guidance that you need, but equally those that you can also influence and, perhaps make impact on the way they think about things or their perspective. And so when I think about social capital and the experiences I've had, it's been a combination of personal individuals and professional. Personal, I would say, is as early as kind of my youth with my grandmother. I think about her and her network. She was very much involved in, helping those that were less fortunate, working with charities and other organizations. Watching her navigate those relationships kind of influenced how I thought about the world and things around that. And then as I work through, as a female surgeon in a very competitive space, largely male-dominated space as well, who are those people within my social capital that I could leverage to provide support, guidance, mentorship, and confidence? There were other surgeons that I looked up to, both men and women, who guided me through that, who kind of gave me the confidence to believe that I could take the path less traveled. And as I've evolved as a business leader, as an innovator, I would say that now I really think about social capital more as a reciprocal environment. It's really not a one-way street. It's very much about give and take, like any sound relationship. And you have to invest time in these relationships. It's not a one-off. You're not going to just meet someone once and assume that's it. They've kind of become part of your social capital. You have to make the time to build on those relationships, and equally be open-minded to the feedback and the comments that they're going to give you as you're working through that journey. But I would agree with what Ayushi said and what Monica said as well.
Thank you for that. And the reminder, right, that it is a reciprocal thing. I know that in the keynote, one of the things I pointed out is it takes a lot of time, and it often starts, at least the recommendation I always make is, it starts with figuring out how you can provide value to other people. And part of that is about having empathy, right? There's a whole bunch of social skills and soft skills that go into really putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So being able to be there. And I appreciate how you talked about social capital from the perspective of the person walking in and mentoring or supporting, whether it's other surgeons or hopefully other founders or want to be founders who will come into this space and hope to make the impact. Annalisa, what do you have to add to this question about leveraging social capital and the value it's had for you?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow panelists here. And Nadine said two words that really resonated with me, and that's roller coaster. As a startup founder, being and leading a startup is quite a roller coaster ride. Leading it. But in leading a startup, you also have to have a really strong social capital network. As you're raising funds, you're going to get a lot of no's, and you have to you have to stay strong through that. And, once you get, a yes, and then another yes, then you just kind of ride on that. And then you ask those investors, who they think you should talk to. And then from there, you can, add to your own network, and then it just grows and grows. So, can be kind of rough at the beginning, but once you find some positive folks who get what you're doing, who believe in what you're doing, then you just continue to ride that and grow your own professional network along the way, and alongside letting your business grow.
Thank you. So I'm going to assume that for those of you listening, a lot of this is not new, but believe it or not, sometimes it really does need to be highlighted. This idea that social capital is important, especially with women, is something that surprised me, but honestly, I'll have to admit it's something that I had to learn myself. And one of the things I know as a psychologist is there's a vast world of difference between knowing something and being able to act on that insight or knowledge. So I meet a ton of women who I might be able to make the case to that social capital is important, that working hard alone is just not what's going to get them where they want to get beyond early career, right? So maybe really early on in your career, where you went to school, what your degree was, what your GPA was, those things are going to carry you pretty far. But after a certain point, you're competing with a bunch of people who are just as accomplished as you. And yet, getting them to take those steps, to start building the relationships and to start leveraging the relationships seems to be a real challenge. So I know Monica mentioned, among other things, being shy and introverted and how that was a challenge for her. And Ayushi, would love to start you off on this question of understanding what have been your biggest obstacles, either in building your professional network or leveraging that social capital once your network was actually built.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wall. So something which Annalisa said resonated with me. Social capital, the way I see it is in two parts. One is your direct contacts, so all the people that you know personally. But the second part, and the more exponential part to it, is all the contacts of your contacts. And that's when the whole networking effect kicks in. A big obstacle that I had, which was, I think, self-made, was not having the confidence and telling myself that, oh, I'm too young to be a startup founder, or keep thinking that, oh, who's going to support me? But it turns out people do love to help. And if they see your dedication, they will come and join forces with you to help you succeed in where you want to be. So I think the big one was not to be shy. So I was very shy as I tried to approach some of these people in the beginning. The second big obstacle was finding that first right advocate. So that's your first mentors or your first person who really sees your vision, either individually or as a company, and then gives you the right set of guidance. And yes, you can take it or reject it, and that's your personal decision, but you have that knowledge now that you can use. And the second part of your question was leveraging it. And I think that's the bigger one. You can talk to as many people as you want, have as many first connections, but it's really about nurturing that nurturing that network and making sure as and when you need to leverage it, it really comes through. So this is more professional, but as startup founders, we're always busy. We're always in meetings. If we just finished fundraising, we're starting to plan the next fundraising round, and it just never stops, and life catches up to you that way. I think what I've tried to do now is set some time so you can actually take that time, put in the effort, and build this relationship. So those were some of the obstacles I had.
So far I've heard confidence, right? Not thinking that you necessarily have something to add that other people are going to be interested in hearing, or worrying about why somebody would want to help you. Finding that first right connection, finding somebody who could be that first step, and then time, right? Like this issue of time, it takes time. We keep on coming back to this idea that we're talking about real relationships. We're not talking about a virtual or real Rolodex of business cards. We're not talking about having followers on social media. We're really talking about getting to know people, getting to know what they're about, but also making sure that they understand what we're about so that we can provide value, provide support, and then ask for it when we need it. Annalisa, how about you? What has been one of the challenges that you faced in building and or leveraging your social capital?
Sure. I would have to say the biggest challenge was when I, kind of was at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. So my first full-time job out of grad school was in venture capital. And, I beat out a lot of, other applicants. Jobs in VC are highly sought after. And, when I landed that job, I kind of felt like those shoes were too big for me. And I didn't have, confidence to, go to networking events and kind of schmooze with other people in VC. I just wasn't there yet. I felt like an outsider. And, for me, that went on for, several months because I was so new to the field. I was new to the community. And, it was just something that, I knew I had to overcome if I wanted to grow and wanted to continue working in this profession. So, what I did was I leveraged the networks of those that I work with, some of the partners, attended events with them, that sort of thing. And, eventually things, worked out really well and I was able to, build a network. But again, I think the biggest challenge was I just felt like I didn't have anything to offer because I was so young and green and wasn't well experienced. But, over time, that kind of passed.
We have a repetition on a theme here, a feeling that in our youth we have very little to offer. And I mean, maybe some of that comes from the way we're raised, right? Be seen, not heard, let the grown-ups speak. Sometimes that can get, we can hold on to those for a long time. You used a word, schmooze. And I see that as a huge, huge roadblock, at least psychologically, that a lot of men and women, but let's focus on women because that's what we get to do today, really have with the concept of networking, that it feels like schmoozing, that it feels disingenuine, transactional. And I'm really curious if that is something that either Monica or Dr. Hachach-Haram, if those are things that you have struggled with too, or if you have other barriers or roadblocks.
I can speak next. So for me, an obstacle was how do I demonstrate my skills, my capabilities without coming across as a boastful person or bragging to people, about my capabilities. It was always, a struggle there where you would see colleagues that would quickly just broadcast to everybody, this is what I did, this is what I can do, and take credit for everything. And, I never wanted to come across in that way, but it's like, how can I share my capabilities without, being perceived in that way? So how I was able to overcome that was it began to click for me, synergies of projects that I was working on, how I could have one-on-one meetings with leaders and show them the value that I was providing on these projects, and that it was an opportunity for me to consult with them and get their input and their ideas so that it could be considered for the projects. And that allowed me to build relationships with them and share with them my capabilities and my ideas. And so as I did that, I was serving them by allowing them to provide input and building those relationships. I began to build a brand with them as someone who is capable of doing X, Y, and Z when they didn't see me in that way before. And what you spoke to also, Dr. Wall, was around networking came across as kind of manipulative to me in terms of how I saw people approaching it. And so one of the ways I was able to overcome that for myself was to take the approach of serving. And I've heard other people, mention that as well, as like providing your value. And so when people, as I would talk to them, I would ask them, what are your needs? What do you need help with? How can I, serve and help you? They would be vulnerable to share those things with me. And I was like, oh, well, I do know somebody that I could connect you with who could help you with that. Or I can do some research on that myself and share that information with you. And so again, a great opportunity to serve and help people build a brand, build a relationship that grows over time. But then you're also demonstrating your skills, your capability while you're helping them. And so by serving is a way that I was able to overcome the shyness, the introvertedness, and the challenge of making sure that I'm not being perceived in the negative way, but viewed in a positive way as I'm building these relationships and networking.
I have to say, I feel like, and maybe this is something that we can also discuss a little bit later, that sometimes that is a challenge that is uniquely feminine. This need to be able to build this and either worry about being perceived or actually be perceived as more manipulative, and really having to think about how can I tell people how great I am, because I know I can do these things well without coming across as cocky, full of myself, overconfident. It is something I hope that slowly that we can change, that we can become more confident in just being clear and factual about what we bring to the table. It's so much easier to provide real value when we don't have to dance around explaining to people how we can help them. Dr. Hachach-Haram, how about you? What are some of the things that you've dealt with?
I think these are some great comments. And, just to kind of add to that, I guess talking a bit more about my particular use case, I think largely, healthcare in and of itself is very, very complex, right? And trying to disrupt in this very challenging environment is a big decision. And so when you think about obstacles that you're going through, really trying to take that first step, as many of you know, a great idea doesn't necessarily lead to a great business. It's really taking those first tentative steps to try and turn an idea of really changing a paradigm. In my case, it was surgery, into something that's scalable. And that was a really hard decision kind of early on for me. Is this something I want to take on? I had young children at the time. I was in surgical training. There was a lot of naysayers, who are you as a, surgeon going to change, who are you to change and disrupt how we've been doing things for hundreds of years? And so it's really kind of how do you make sure that you can match or meet that skepticism with that ambition and execution focus to actually make it happen. And of course, it's not a decision we often take on our own. There's sometimes those that you're going to rely on your support network, that personal support network, that personal social capital. But equally, as you're working through that journey, where does your social capital really play a role? And for me, again, as I was trying to push through things, there's this whole natural tendency to be impatient. You want to drive forward quickly. You want to see results immediately in a very complicated space. And so again, at this point, working through those personal obstacles and having that tried and tested social capital that really could play that pivotal role, I think was really important for me. They gave me that continuous belief and confidence to follow my ambitions, even when many people would say, what you're doing is impossible. A female surgeon, first-time founder, first-time CEO, you just tick every box of like how this is not going to work. But I think facing that head on, being execution focused, having the social capital to lean back on when you have those moments of self-doubt, I think was really critical and helped me kind of work through those personal, I guess, kind of general obstacles in disrupting a very, very traditional space.
Again, one of the unifying themes with what every single one of you has shared is the psychological piece, right? It's the confidence and the trusting in yourself and the understanding what this means. The question that I started the keynote off with today is the question I usually start other women or people off with when I talk about social capital, because we a lot of times do really feel like it's schmoozing or it's transactional or it's wrong to leverage or to rely on our networks, our circles, our clubs to choose partners or CEOs or businesses. And yet we do it every single day. Again, like I go back to, how did you choose your dentist? How did you choose, even if you're looking within your insurance network, you probably ask other people, hey, you're on this, are you seeing this person when you move into a new neighborhood? How do you select a realtor? We're constantly asking the people we know who they know. And we're using the trust and the relationships that we've built with them to make decisions faster and hopefully better, right? So we're looking at roadblock-wise, what I've heard again is issues with confidence, issues with perception, challenges figuring out, even as we're building relationships, how to position ourselves and how to position our value in a way that feels right for us, but it also feels right for whoever our audiences are. I've talked about patience, right? Realizing that it takes a lot of time and sometimes wanting things to move really fast and wanting to get results and not being able to do that. So clearly, every single one of you has been able to overcome some of these challenges and has been able to build the networks that you need, build the relationships that you need, and leverage social capital to support your existing foundation of talent and ability, right? It's not that you got where you got because you know the right people. It's that you started with a foundation of true talent and hard work and perseverance, and that you were able to elevate that foundation by having the right connections to access opportunities. So I'm going to start with Annalise at this time, and I'm really interested to know some of these roadblocks that you say you faced beyond time, right? Because I remember you saying, well, initially I was new, and after a while I felt more comfortable, but beyond time, how were you able to get past that roadblock?
Sure. I think for me, the best solution for overcoming that roadblock was actually what Monica said earlier, and that is to be helpful to others. So helping others through the years has actually helped me build my social capital. Through the years, I've taken a very pro-social approach to building that capital, and I did this by being very helpful, very giving, and by getting to know other people, by strengthening my own existing relationships, by building new ones, and by really trusting others and being trustworthy at the same time. And this is an approach that I've been, taking for a long time. I know you mentioned time, and it was quite a journey for me from when I started to where I am now. I've been working with medical devices for 17 years, and it took such a long time to get to this point where I can be, I can be helpful to others, that sort of thing. And by continuing to do that has really helped me, just really build my network and build my social capital. And when I first started out, to get to this point, I did everything that I could to help build that network by attending entrepreneurial events, by joining entrepreneurial organizations, by joining, kind of like women entrepreneurial groups like Women in Bio, that sort of thing, and getting to know folks within these organizations and seeing them over and over at repeat events, and then over time that just got me more comfortable and to the point where I genuinely like helping others, and just being in that at that level of comfort has really helped me build my social capital.
That is fantastic advice, right? Like, it is a great starting point is to find organizations locally, or now, one of the benefits of the pandemic is really has allowed us to branch out virtually and much more broadly, and start with a common ground, right? You mentioned like Women in Bio or Device Alliances, right? Is that idea of everybody coming into the conversation is starting with the same, with a baseline of common interests, which can sometimes make having that conversation a little easier. That is my big thing with LinkedIn that I love over anything else. Everybody coming in is coming in basically with the same proposition. We are here to build business partnerships in one shape, in one form or another. Let me see. I am curious, Monica, how about you? How did you overcome, how did you manage your introversion, the shyness? Like, how did you, because I'm going to assume that you started taking action before or even without having to shift from being an introvert to more of an extrovert. So how did you do that?
It was really with building relationships over time. So as I had mentioned, I started having one-on-one meetings with leaders. And as I was building those relationships and demonstrating to them my capabilities, their trust, grew in me. And that got me more comfortable as well. Like the introversion was decreasing because I was building these strong relationships with these leaders. But in addition to that, I learned, I had read a Harvard Business Review article about building your board of directors. And exposure to that concept just blew my mind, but it was brilliant and so strategic, such an intentional way of building the community to help support you get to where you want to go and the goals that you want to achieve. So I decided to take that strategy of determining if I have a board of directors, my own personal board of directors, who are the 7 to 10 people that I want to surround myself around who are going to help me get to where I want to go. So who's a mentor? Who is a sponsor? Who is my confidant that I could actually confide in about absolutely anything? Who's my cheerleader? Who's my truth teller? Who's going to tell me the truth, if I'm doing good or if I'm not doing good? So I had to start building my team of people that I could trust in and rely on who would help me. And I rely on them so much of always giving me feedback so that I know what I'm doing right, what I need to improve on, so I continue to grow and develop as a person and as a professional in my career. So that has helped me tremendously in overcoming those obstacles. But also, as was mentioned, being involved in these professional associations has been extremely helpful for me. It's gotten me more and more comfortable getting out of my comfort zone and just meeting absolutely anyone and being able to relate to people at all levels. So I'm actively involved with Device Alliance and attending their events. Also with the National Human Resources Association, I now serve on the board of directors for them and take on these, again, serving and leadership roles. And so that has really helped strengthen my capabilities. And in my opinion, it's given me a competitive advantage because, as we've talked about, there are a lot of women in the workforce who aren't comfortable with this, but because I have gotten to a point that I am comfortable with this and I'm gaining all these, again, ideas, insights, knowledge that I can share, it's given me a competitive advantage in the workplace as well.
And it's interesting also as we move through this, when you do it enough to realize how small the world is, those 6 or 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon, it's a real thing. Suddenly you realize that all the people are interconnected in some way, and you talk about somebody and they're like, this person, and there's something about also creating that sense of community, of not feeling so isolated and alone. And I'm thinking about this very much, Dr. Hachach-Haram, when we're talking about like stepping in and breaking into a space. I have a husband who's an anesthesiologist, so I got a sense of what the world of being a surgeon is, and a female surgeon or a female, just since I have many friends who work with him who, in male dominated spaces. So I am curious, for you, what steps did you take to overcome the challenges that were inherent to building and then leveraging your social capital?
I think there's a really exciting element to this where there's this freeing autonomy that you kind of can build. When you think about what you're trying to do, in my case, we were really trying to disrupt surgery. It's incredibly disruptive. It's very mission driven, and so everything we were trying to do, it was really about putting mission front and center of everything we do. But what that means as well is that once you've really identified what your goals are as an individual, what your ambitions, what you want to achieve, it then enables you to really assemble a team of, individuals, social capital, those that are going to support you, that may have similar beliefs and values, but more importantly, those who are going to challenge you as well when you're getting it wrong and encourage you during the ups and downs. And I think for me, having that autonomy to decide, who I wanted to bring on that journey with me, who is going to be, like I guess Monica was describing, who's going to be your champion, who's going to be your challenger, who's going to be your cheerleader, who's going to be that person that you can guide and support you, is actually very exciting and inspiring as well, that you have the ability to make those choices and really take those choices by the horn and kind of push them forward. And you have a responsibility then to make sure that you are surrounding yourself by great people that are going to fulfill a lot of those roles. And I think through that journey as well, it became a lot about inclusivity for me, like understanding not only who are going to support me or surround me through that journey, but immediately by extension, who can I also support? How can I pay it forward as well? So this idea that we all need help, we all need mentors, we all need support through that is critical. And what I found through my journey is as important as helpful as it's been having that social capital to help me through my obstacles. When I'm also playing that role and helping others go through their obstacles, it makes me empowered. It makes me more excited about what I'm doing. I feel if I'm able to help someone else, then, what are those things that I can kind of take away from that and reflect on what I'm doing for my own ambitions as well. And the final thing I'd say is, we all have these unconscious biases that affect our outlooks and at times our actions. And so really trying to make sure that you bring a collective and collaborative group around you through that is fundamental. They keep you grounded, they keep you real, and they kind of push you when you're not having those great days, the roller coaster that others described, but equally can really push you forward during that acceleration that you might be going through during your journey as a founder, as a CEO, as a disruptor.
Thank you for that. I think a lot of what I've heard, both in what you said and what Monica shared, is this idea of this reframe, right? Like, how do you reframe this experience that might feel really difficult in terms of, I get to build my board of directors. And by the way, I wrote those down. There were 5. If you find the 7 to 10, Monica, other titles, please send them my way. I will be sharing them broadly. Or this idea of leaning into your mission and realizing I am doing, as uncomfortable as this might be initially, I am doing this because there is something that I want to build. There is something that I want to do, and I can't do it alone. We know this. I will do it better if I have a team. I will do it better if I have a diverse team where there's a lot of different ideas. There's people who are going to challenge my biases, people who are going to challenge my approaches, show me better ways potentially, or at least force me to think more broadly about how I do things. But again, there's this idea of overcoming the roadblock by forcing yourself to look at the process differently. So it is not necessarily schmoozing. It is not necessarily transactional. It is about being there to support your missions. It's about being able to step into a role and maybe not thinking about what can I get, but what can I offer, but still in showing up to offer something to other people, forcing you in that position of making connections, building relationships, and getting outside of your comfort zone. And so far, we've also talked about, if it feels a little scary, doing all of this within the context of a safe, structured group. Ayushi, I'm wondering, you talked a little bit when you were talking earlier about some steps that you took to overcome this fear of like, who's going to support me? Who wants to hear what I have to say? I'm so young in this space. And then finding the right advocate. But I'm wondering, what else, or what specific steps did you take to overcome the challenges?
Yeah, so I think just taking a step back, something I've heard across all panelists is a bit of imposter syndrome. And I think it's very amplified when you're a startup founder too, because in the back of your head, you're always thinking, what am I missing? What is the big picture that I've not fully pieced together yet? And the other part which I heard is one of the ways to overcome is just introspection, right? I think I personally believe we're our own biggest cheerleader and the biggest self-critic. So beyond just having external people tell me that, hey, it's okay, it's just one small thing, I've also tried to take a personal bystander approach. So maybe something would happen, or there was a connection I really wanted to build, but the meeting did not go well. And I'm like, oh crap, like this did not work out how I imagined. And I might kind of mope around about it for 5-10 minutes, but try to pull myself out of the situation, be a bystander, and evaluate that, hey, it's just one small thing. And I found it more empowering, because if you can detach yourself from that issue and then bring yourself back in again with an action plan, then you have a different game altogether. Beyond that personal advice that I've been giving myself and reminding myself every day, because it's harder to do that when you're in the down of the roller coaster than you're on the up. I think just keeping everybody updated. So this always stunts me, but let's say I met somebody 6 months ago and we talked about something, maybe we were a little too early for their exact interest. And then we hit that milestone, or we hit that progress, and I just send them a quick update that, hey, hope you're doing well. Recently, I have some exciting news to share. We accomplished ABC, or I personally accomplished ABC. And I'm always surprised by how many times I get a reply. I think it's 100% right now. So I'm going to knock on wood so that it stays that way. But just keeping people informed. So even just those little touch points, I think they really add up as you go along.
That's exactly the note I put down, is like, you're talking about following up, and it's the frequent small touches, and the frequent small touches can look like so many things. It doesn't need to be taking somebody out for dinner or grabbing the proverbial coffee. It is a quick email, a post, an announcement, a hello, how are you doing? But those things that continue to help you build the relationship in ways that might feel more comfortable, that accommodate this whole idea of being busy, so busy all the time, and not having a lot of time necessarily. So one of my conditions to speaking anywhere is that I want to see change happen. I want to see change happen. Insight is great. We've got a lot of insights, a lot of inspiration. I feel kind of excited. There's so much that I've heard here tonight that I want to share with the women I work with and with friends, and that I want to apply to myself. But I would like us to round off this panel discussion talking really about one call to action, one piece of advice. It has to be something that's actionable, that the women and men, if you'd like to try it, but if you can think of something that might be specific to the challenges we face as women, the women in our audience can use tomorrow to build stronger, better, more effective social and professional networks and leverage those. I'm going to start with Dr. Hachach-Haram, and then I'm going to go through every single one of you ladies.
Thank you very much. And it's been an incredible panel, just listening to so many different perspectives around social capital. I mean, from my perspective, I think there's a number of key takeaways or messages that I would often like to share around this topic. I think first and foremost, it's really telling people that it's okay to demonstrate an element of vulnerability. Oftentimes there's this perception that when you come across as vulnerable, that means weak. Whereas when in my leadership style, it's very much about showing those both sides, so this firm decisiveness, but also that human vulnerable element to it. And I think that enables you to have more honest and more real relationships with your social capital that you can then really leverage for change and for impact that you want to have. At least in my experiences, I don't, when I look at those relationships that I'm building, those social networks that are critical to my success, I want those to be deep-seated relationships. Those superficial kind of limited relationships can be valuable to some extent, but they don't really pay dividends sort of downstream. And when you think about time and how precious your time is, particularly when you're leading a company, you want to make sure that the time that you're spending with those key network or those individuals that are going to help you go through your journey, your ups and downs that you may leverage, and also you may give back to as well, are going to be really meaningful relationships. So trying to build and establish that infrastructure around you that enables you to be the best that you can be, to surround yourself with good people that you want to have those deep, open, honest relationships that will challenge you, that will push you to your limits. but will also support you, I think is key. And the other comment I would say, and I often say it to people in my company as well, is always be open-minded about meeting new people and letting them into your inner circle. As you start to scale and grow and your profile grows as well in the space, and I can talk about my space in particular, it's very easy for it to kind of go to your head. But, you know, my comment, my feedback is, you know, stay humble, stay rooted, be open-minded. You'll never know how meeting an individual may actually transform what you're doing and how they may play such a pivotal role in that social capital that you're trying to build. And I think the last thing I would say is, you know, at the heart of everything you're doing and all these networks that you're building, you know, stay true to the mission, why you're starting, why you went on your path in the first place. It's your greatest asset. It's what becomes an anchor that draws people to you and that you can continue to lean on as you hopefully downstream become social capital to other individuals as well, as part of that reciprocity that we sort of talked about. So I think those would be some of the key takeaways that I would give. But I'm really looking forward to hear what the other panelists have to say.
Thank you. So if I'm thinking call to action, right, that one thing that people can do, and please feel free to unmute yourself and jump in if you're like, no, not that, Alessandra, right? You talked about like being willing to be vulnerable, and I think that is true, right? That is whether you're talking about finding the next person to date or finding somebody who you're going to talk to about what you're building and you have to see the back end of your business, or applying for a job or letting somebody know you want to leave your company. There's a lot of vulnerability there, and these are real relationships, and and as such we have to show up authentically. I know the word is overused, but that is where the vulnerability comes from. But as a call to action, as a thing that somebody can do, could I throw out there, you said staying true to your mission. So maybe as a first step, if you're thinking about building your social capital, identify what that mission is. You have one that is very clearly defined, but sometimes that's not as simple. So maybe starting there as a good starting place and then leveraging or leaning on that to then build the courage and figure out who's going to be on this board of directors, who do I need to connect with next, and where do I go from here? Fair?
Fair. Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Ayushi, what actionable, it's a call to action. So it's a directive that somebody else could take starting tomorrow to build their social capital and to leverage it and to grow professionally as a woman, and especially a woman in medical devices.
Yeah, I think mine is going to be very technical. So I think one thing which everybody hates about meeting is the scheduling part. So it's really, really hard to coordinate schedules and then find a time, and that's the worst thing, because they slip through your fingers even before you get to meet them first. So I think something which I've tried is I already have a blurb written of who I am, why I want to meet you, and hey, do you have 30 minutes? And I use something called Calendly. So I can drop the link in the chat, and you can set like maybe 15, 20 or 30 minute sessions and sync it with your calendar, add Zoom link right there and then. So when you send that message to people, as soon as they click on it, now they're like, oh, what's the harm in scheduling that first 15 minutes? I'll think about it when it's 15 minutes before that 15 minutes meeting, right? And at least you have them on your calendar. So that's my call to action. There is a little downside to it. Your calendar can get really full. That was my last week, but beyond that, all great connections, and that's how you take the first step. So I think that would be my call to action: keeping that blurb ready and having a calendar you can send out. So it's just touch meeting schedule.
I think that's fantastic, and really, you know, the technical and the pragmatic call to action or advice is really useful. So knowing how it is you're going to position that ask to meet somebody in just a few lines, having things ready. I had all of those when I started. Like I pre-written summaries of, you know, what I was doing depending on who I was talking to, why, because it really streamlines things, but also having the right systems in place. So use Calendly, I use Acuity. There's so many out there that are really fantastic, and making it really easy for the people you want to connect with to connect back with you. Fantastic advice. Thank you very much. Monica, what is your call to action to our audience?
My call to action is I would encourage people to identify one or two people that you really admire, respect, and may even want to, strive to be like them, and ask if they would be open to scheduling 30-minute conversation with you. And these days, it's so much easier, using Zoom, Google Hangouts, like people don't even have to leave their house to do it. And you can have that face-to-face conversation. And if they do agree and you're able to do it, be prepared to share a 5-minute overview of yourself. So be vulnerable enough to share and open up about who you are and who you want to be or what your goals are. And then ask them as well to share a little bit about themselves so that you can build that relationship. But then ask, what can I do to help you? Is there anything that you need help on that I could learn and grow from that experience by helping you? So that would be my call to action, to challenge people to, again, identify one or two people that they can do that with in the next month and see where that takes you.
I think that's fantastic. Identify one or two people you've really wanted to meet. Reach out to them. Realize, yes, who are we? Who are we to take up? I hate that notion, but take up other people's time. The worst that's going to happen is those people, actually the truly worst that's going to happen is they blow you off. They ghost you. That's terrible. Please don't ghost people. Just say, I'm not interested. I don't have time. It's so rare for people to be rude and to say, why are you contacting me? I don't even know who you are. Don't talk to me ever again. And you run into those people and you never want to have a professional relationship with them, or maybe they're just having a really, really bad day. And then I love that last piece of advice, which is, end the conversation by asking how you can support something. There is this reciprocity thing that happens for us as humans, where the second somebody gives us help, we feel beholden to reciprocate that support and that help. So first of all, it's just a good thing to do, right? In making the world a better place, to figure out how you can support other people. But if we're thinking strategically, it is also a great way to have people throw that question back at you and say, how can I help you? How can I support you? And I've got a call to action with that, but I'm going to wait to see if somebody else puts it out there next. Annalisa, what is your advice? What is your call to action for the women listening to us here?
Sure. I have 3 pieces of advice. First, show some gratitude. If there's someone who helped you out, in your journey to where you are now, reconnect with that person if you haven't spoken to that person in a long time. Send a quick note, a text, an email, a phone call. Remember those phone calls? Yeah. It would be nice to, reconnect with that person who really made such an impression on your life. Because I think that'll just leave you feeling so good. The other call to action is that I think you should connect with someone new, maybe through Device Alliance, maybe through tonight's event, maybe through a Device Alliance event next month. I think there's more and more networking events that are, opening up. And I think, now's the time. People are excited. Oh, a lot of people are. I'm excited, to go out and, reconnect and meet new people. So, I would, put that on your bucket list for, 2021. And then finally, I think the third call to action is to celebrate and cheer on someone that that's doing something great or did something great. You can start with just going on LinkedIn, for instance. Every day I check out LinkedIn and I see my connections share something great. Like in the device world, they got a regulatory approval. I hit that celebrate button. I make a comment. I'm like, way to go. I know that was difficult, but you did it. The people, they read that, they read the comments. I read comments that, I'm giving on LinkedIn. And I think it's important that, we're each other's cheerleader and, we celebrate, great things and even support each other through not so great things. So those are my call to actions for all of you.
I think those are fantastic because they're really simple ways, both of giving those multiple touches that we were just talking about, right? Through gratitude, reconnecting with people who have been there for us, people who we'd like to continue having in our space, reaching out to new connections that can be really difficult sometimes, and then of course, like using our virtual space. I think it's really easy to start connecting first on LinkedIn and building a relationship there, and then translating that relationship into something more later. The one thing that I was going to add, other than well, two things honestly that I was going to add other than the keynote call to action for everybody here, to think of one woman in your circle who you could support with your social capital, is remember what your ask is. So really be prepared in these conversations. If you have an ask, if you're going to offer to support somebody and then that person's going to come back and offer in turn to support you, are you clear when they say, how can I help you, about what kind of help you're going to ask for? And know that the help is different if we're speaking to a brand new connection than if we're speaking to somebody who we've been meeting with and collaborating with for a few years. My other thing was going to say, start with friends. There was a question early on when we were preparing this event about, well, are we talking about professional connections or personal connections? And the answer is both, right? Dr. Hachach-Haram you started talking about your grandmother. And I'm thinking of when I finally built the side of my business that was really focused on supporting and elevating women. And I was starting to think about how to get my foot into the corporate world as a psychologist who had absolutely no social capital, because I have no relationship with my patients other than the doctor-patient relationship, right? It is verboten. There are no secondary relationships as a psychologist. I had friends who worked in places like Cisco and Northrop here, who I was sharing my stories with, and I was letting them know what I wanted to do, and they would step in and say, how can I help? And I'm like, who can you introduce me to in your company who might be interested in having me come and speak up about helping women speak up, right? So don't forget, it can be really hard. It can feel, again, like something transactional to leverage your personal relationships, but those are the people who know you really well, and they hopefully love you, and they trust you, and they're going to be the first ones to want to elevate you. So don't forget that is a great place to start, and they can create connections with other people, and then start building that natural network. So we now come to another fun part of tonight's event, which is the Q&A portion. We're going to put you ladies on the spot. And we have one question, but Joanne, I've got a question for you. Are you going to moderate the Q&A portion of things?
I will, so that way we can also ask you.
I get to sit back on my standing chair. There we go.
Not quite. We still want you to, participate. You have such a wealth of knowledge, and thank you all, our panelists, for your excellent, insightful, and specific discussion for growing social capital and leveraging it. So with our questions then, we do have one here, particularly more aimed for probably Dr. Hachach-Haram, Ayushi, and Annalisa, and any of you could take this. But for those of you navigating to outreach to investors, who was most helpful, thinking back, who was most helpful in making the meaningful introductions? Was it your mentors, your advisors, and other investors, or fellow entrepreneurs? So essentially, when you're trying to look for those investors, who was the biggest advocate for you? Was there a trend, or is it just anyone in general? And I'll leave it to anyone who wants to pick that question up first.
I'd just jump in here and say it's really all of the above. When you're going through that fundraising journey, and anyone who's gone through it knows, you don't really want to be cold calling investors to say, hey, I'm so-and-so, can I come pitch to you? It's not that you can't do it, but really you want those warm introductions so that you can really have that kind of high chance of moving to a first pitch, second pitch, third meeting. And so it's a hustle. I mean, you really want to be leveraging every individual that that can make those intros, can put in a good word for you and get you in front of those investors. And of course, the rest is up to you to make that first pitch impressive enough to keep the conversation going. I would say even fellow entrepreneurs, I think, can be as valuable as investors and mentors and others. And it's something in return now I do a lot of as well. So many of my peers who are going through fundraising, I'm always willing to introduce them to great investors that I've had the pleasure of meeting, who I thought would be a great value add to them. And I think companies, venture funds and others like that, because if someone's referring a peer, I think it speaks highly of what they think of the company, and that they're making the efforts to take that forward. And in my experience, a lot of those entrepreneur to entrepreneur intros to investors have always yielded very high kind of positive outcomes. So to answer that again, I would say it's really all of the above. You really want to be leveraging every person. And then, how many times you can ask the same person for multiple intros. I think this is a evolution of a relationship. It's not a one-off. You're not going to meet this person for an intro and then move on. I mean, if you're really investing in your social capital, you're building this relationship over time. And so there's no reason why you can go back to those individuals and ask for more help if it makes sense in that particular use case. But one of the biggest roles that people have is, I think, CEOs and founders of companies is actually spending a lot of time investing in those relationship building and building the social capital, because it's really critical to your success as you leverage it for fundraising, for business development, for recruitment, for hiring, and everything else around it.
Excellent, thank you. Ayushi and Elisa, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I can go. I was just going to say that, she's right. It's 100% a hustle. It absolutely is. I think, fundraising is so difficult. And it's, all mentors, advisors, investors, fellow entrepreneurs, they're all, very helpful. Your mentors and advisors can introduce you to investors who previously invested in their companies. And they're kind of, sticking their neck out for you and saying, hey, investor, this is a company that you have to meet. Also, an investor to an investor meeting is also very helpful, because especially if that first investor put money in your company, that speaks volumes, right? Because it's just like, I'm de-risking this company for you. I can, potentially provide, some due diligence materials. I think that's really helpful. And also, fellow entrepreneurs can be especially helpful, because, they might tell you, some watch outs with some investors, because not all investors are the same. They might say, well, this investor, they're okay, they're not really active, or, I mean, they can, provide, some advice, because it really is a hustle. It's it's maybe like a double, triple full-time job, raising money. But I think all of these individuals that can make these meaningful intros will make the process a lot smoother.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting hearing a former VC's point of view on this, and I fully agree. Something which most founders ignore is that you should also run your due diligence on the investors. I'll give you a recent example because I'm in the process of building my social capital for the next fundraising. I was going through this massive list of investors, and I saw on one person's website that one of their portfolio companies' founder is a friend of mine. So I actually called them up and said that, hey, do you know these guys? And they're like, yeah, stay away. And I was like, all right, that's the end of the story. There's no further need of information there. And I think it's important to recognize everybody's input has different weight in an investment decision. For example, an investor telling another investor that I already have money in this, it's de-risked, as Annalisa said, put in the money too, has a whole different weight compared to a mentor who may not have invested capital in your company, because there is a notion of skin in the game that kicks in when you're in a startup field. And then the overall point is make sure the incentives are aligned and the words weigh in where they need to be. So mentors could help you with angel introductions, former colleagues who are also founders can help you navigate the due diligence, and then other investors can help you raise the next check. So always ask them for that help.
Excellent, thank you so much. We have a question here from Dr. Wall. So we are all incredibly busy. and building your social capital, networking is all time consuming as well. How do you structure your time and energy to build your network and your social capital? We can go ahead and start with Monica, if you want to address this.
That's a great question. And thank you for asking, Dr. Wall. For me, I would say on average, I would estimate around 10 hours a week when it comes to investing in my social capital and building and maintaining my network. So, serving on the board of National Human Resources Association, that definitely takes time with the meetings that I conduct. But it's not just external either, like working with Device Alliance. I'm also doing that within the company that I work in. I'm fairly new to the organization, so I have a lot of work to do in building my social network within the company that I'm in right now. And so I am always meeting new people who are willing to introduce me to other people. And I spend at least, an hour a day with one-on-ones with new people so that I can build those relationships. So it's very important to, in my opinion, to set aside the time in your calendar to be able to create new relationships and maintain the relationships that you have. And so I estimate about 10 hours a week that I invest in that.
That's incredible. Very much a dedication to that. Let's see. Annalisa, would you like to add anything to your scheduling, your time and energy for building your social capital and network?
Yeah, I think I set a bit of time each day to build and strengthen my social capital, whether it's connecting with my current network over a phone call or meeting them in person, and even even easier going to different social media outlets, LinkedIn included, to just kind of see what's going on within my network. If there's any news, any happenings with the people I'm connected with, I think that helps me kind of stay in touch with people that have crossed paths with that sort of thing.
Excellent. So a little bit a day gets the job done. Dr. Hachach-Haram, did you want to change anything, or is that simply exactly that for you too?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's really hard to juggle everything that we're trying to get through, in our working week, surgeon, mother, trying to drive a company as well. But I still absolutely make time and prioritize this, because this is, like I said earlier, you can't just stop and then start when you need it. This has to be an investment over time. And I like what Monica is saying. It's internal as well. It's not just about external, but if you're in an organization or in a company, actually investing time and staying connected with your peers, with your stakeholders, your internal stakeholders, key individuals, key decision makers, I think is really, really important. So I kind of like that comment. I think it's really important, as much as you're focusing externally, to focus internally as well.
Perfect. And Ayushi, did you have any comments or addition to the structure of your time and energy for building your network?
Actually, it resonates with everything that has been said, but something I try to do is, when you're building your social capital, I think one thought I keep having is, oh, but I have all this other work that needs to be done too. So recently I've just blocked out time where it's a me time. I take that time to work on the tech, anything else that I need to get done. And then all the other slots are open for scheduling. So once you can strike that happy balance, whatever fits your needs. And then the second thing, which I realize, is you may not always have to send them an update, or you can come across an interesting article that came up during a conversation last time, and you can send it their way that, hey, I saw this and I thought of you in our conversation, and there you go. That's another conversation opener right there. So just keeping that in the back of your mind as you reach out to these touch points, I think, I don't have a formal time structure to it anymore. It's from 9 a.m. to the next day is 9 a.m., whatever it takes.
It's amazing. And I love your very practical examples of what to say, what to do, because that's something that I very much struggle with. So thank you, Ayushi. Before I get to your question, Dr. Well, I actually have a question for you. How do you repair burned bridges? We've talked about, relationships, building new relationships, but is it worth the time going back and repairing ones that you didn't do so well in, or should you just move forward? And if you do want to go back, how do you recommend we go about doing that successfully?
You will not be surprised to hear my answer. It depends. It depends on so many things, right? We were talking, I can't remember who, I think it's Annalisa who was talking, for example, with investors. Like, it's nice to get the inside scoop of like, what's this person like? What's this organization like? So I think it sometimes depends on why the bridge was burned. Was it burned because there was a fundamental splitting in values? Was it burned because somebody, you or the other party, did something that was so egregious? Nobody really wants to do that purposefully, but it can happen, right? We are human, therefore we make mistakes. Um, or is it on a misunderstanding? So that's the first thing. It depends on what happened. The other thing would be, I think it depends on how important the relationship is. So is it possible? Absolutely, right? But it really requires understanding why the relationship was broken and starting there. And I think the mistake sometimes people make is to try to go back after water's gone under the bridge and just approach the relationship de novo, like it doesn't matter, as opposed to really talking about the elephant in the room. Um, I'm trying to think if it's happened to me professionally. I mean, I'm sure unwittingly I've burnt bridges without realizing it. But I can't think of anybody who professionally I've been like, I don't want to, I really like something's up and then really wanting to work with it. I can think of times that that's happened. I cannot think of times where that's happened and I wanted to rekindle the relationship. Usually there's a good reason if things were burned.
I don't know if anyone wants to add a comment to that, but it sounds like it depends situation and if it's worth the battle.
I'm sorry that was so vague, but it really is.
No, not at all. I see Ayushi, did you unmute
Yeah.
yourself?
I completely agree. I think with Dr. Wall, you have to test the waters. If there was a very fundamental difference in values, and you also have to gauge at what toxicity level did you part off. There might be, sometimes it's better not to stir the pot. It's important for everybody to move on and heal as well in their own ways. I've personally not come across somebody as well where we burnt the bridge and then I have to go back and work with them, partly because there are a lot of people out there who have the same skill set that you could connect with and have more fundamental value connection as well. And at the end of the day, skill set is important, but those values help the long-term relationship. So sorry, Joanne, it is an answer, which is it depends.
No, by all means, I was just curious simply because we're talking about building new connections, but it's kind of like when we're talking about old ones, do we want to touch the ones that, are a little bit more difficult to skate around? Okay, so we can go back to Dr. Wall's other question, which is, do you think that there are any unique challenges to being a woman in med devices and trying to do this being building social capital, or would you say that it's universal? I'm going to pass that first to maybe Annalisa, since you've kind of had a broad perspective of different roles that you've sat in.
Yeah, I would think so. That I guess, being in med devices for a long time, have I felt that there were challenges in building my social capital, simply for being a woman. I would say yes, but yeah, I started on VC, which, back then, and it's still in some ways now, like kind of an old boys club. Most of the partners are male, right? So it's kind of tough to, join, physically join like networking circles, right? When they're all men, right? Because you already look like an outsider. So, yes, it's very, it was difficult, but I think now, the venture capital landscape has changed, over the past, couple of decades, and it is getting better, recognizing diversity, that sort of thing. But I think that that those initiatives, and then plus women-focused organizations like Women in Bio, for instance, that I'm involved with, have really helped kind of build the confidence to build the social capital by having events which are primarily women, that have topics, event topics that are women focused, that sort of thing. So I think the challenges exist, but I think it's also getting better.
Well, thank you. I don't know, Monica, did you want to add anything? I see you unmuted.
Yeah, a couple things come to my mind. There's studies that talk about how men, when it comes to getting positions, a lot of times they're hired based on potential, versus women are hired based on, they have demonstrated already the capability of being able to do something. And so I would say, in building your network, opportunities do present themselves as you're building your network. And so given those studies, I would think that, that plays out in the building the network as well, of how men are more given opportunities based on potential, versus women have to somehow demonstrate their ability to be able to do it, which is why I think the approaches that we talked about of serving, because while you're serving, you're actually doing and demonstrating, can help you with getting further along in terms of those opportunities that might present itself. And then the other study is around how women, when it comes to jobs, they feel like they have to 100%, be able to do the job before they would even raise their hand to want to be considered for it. Versus men, studies say, they might need to feel 50% capable to do it in order to raise their hand and want to do it. And so I would imagine that presents itself as well when it comes to, building relationships. Like we talked about earlier, like we have to have that confidence, in ourselves as we're building those relationships. And that's why the more you get out there outside your comfort zone and doing it, the more comfortable you'll become with being in those situations. So it's important to get out there and do it as much as possible.
Yeah, so it sounds like that barrier to entry is difficult, but once you continue to push yourself and to push yourself to be out there, by all means, it's something that'll grow into you, that you'll grow into rather. I see Ayushi, you unmuted.
Yeah, so definitely, by the way, apologies, one of my AirPods have decided to die. But so I'll give you a personal example as we're fundraising to, I'm sure the other founders resonate with this as well. Oftentimes when you're either in a room or right now Zoom room, it's probably 15. I've had pitches where there's 15 men, my co-founder who's also a male, and then me. And initially I had gotten so used to that scenario that recently I attended a female founder pitch practice event where everybody is just all females, and it was actually very weird to get used to pitching to an audience that's the same gender. But the way I've started seeing this is you also stand out. You're the only one there. They're going to remember you. So if you shift your mindset in a way that how do I present myself, that on top of my capabilities I'm the most memorable one, then that will resonate with them. So that's helped me so far, and I hope that it keeps helping me as I go forward too.
No, that's an excellent point, taking your differences and your uniqueness and playing that to your advantage instead, to stand out in a crowd of what seems to be, copy paste of one another, which is fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to combine this last question, which is sort of touching on our introverts who have a hard time either with social media, who don't enjoy being on that space, or don't know, if you could give more examples of these soft touches to maintain your social capital. I know, Ayushi, you've mentioned like the outreach to say like, hey, here is an article, or hi, like these are updates that we've had, or hello, how are you doing? Like what other soft touches can you do that either don't involve social media or are extensions of that, that go beyond what were examples that were given already tonight. I don't know if Ayushi, if you wanted to comment on that and anything else.
So I fully empathize with the question. Another question, which is being an introvert. I almost don't use social media, barely post on it. Luckily, my co-founder is less social media shy, so he also gives me that little extra push to post things. If the person is close by, you can. I've started doing this, that for my former university friends, asking them for a Saturday morning coffee, and then you just ask them about their life, how they're doing in their role. I have friends in R&D engineering, quality engineering. It's funny, the R&D people hate the quality hates the R&D, but overall you get to hear about other people's life, and it's more casual too, and you're doing it with somebody you feel comfortable with. I think that's the first thing, and it will give you enough confidence to then do a bit more of the cold outreach. So on top of sending updates and sending interesting articles, that's the other thing I try.
Excellent. Dr. Alessandra Wall, with your soft touches that are not just on social media.
Well, actually, I'm going to combine the questions, but differently. So I'm not on social media other than LinkedIn because I don't have time. When I'm not in front of a computer, I don't want to be in front of a computer. My favorite thing to do, and I will do it after this because I'm a social introvert, so I like people, but my batteries get depleted, is to sit and stare into space. That being said, I think in today's world, it is important to know where the space is, where the stage is, where your voice can have the most amplitude, right? Where are you going to be best heard? And the beauty with something like LinkedIn is it's not social media. You don't need to share pictures of your kitten doing something funny, or I have a puppy that I'm sure has destroyed something based on what I'm hearing him do. I don't need to post about everything that happens in the world and share my opinion. But if I have something of value to share, if I have an ask, if I have a job posting, if I'm looking for a job, it's a great place to go and to be business and to be no nonsense. As an introvert, and when I work with women who are introverts, it's actually a great place to start because it is so removed, right? And you can start with simply commenting or interacting with content that is interesting to you or relevant to you. So it doesn't even need to start off as a, hey, I think that what you're doing is really great. Would you be interested in having a virtual coffee with me? It literally can be posting a comment on somebody else's content, sharing your value, creating a connection over time with them that way, so that if and when you are ready to connect with them, you now have familiarity that makes the whole engagement both more comfortable for you and for them, right? However, if you really, really, really hate social media and you just think it is the worst thing in the world and you want nothing to do with it, first of all, bravo. Second of all, I think that's where really relying on your friends first, then using your friends to get warm introductions to other people where the introduction can be more personal, and then joining small communities is a really, really great way of dipping your toe in the social capital building networking waters as a true introvert, and then be mindful. So that's where you have to be really, really, really strategic. Don't go to everything. I know here in San Diego, I am a member of one chamber. I am a member of a few organizations. I now have permanent Device Alliance membership, which is fantastic. But there's only so much energy that I'm willing to give out. And so I'm very strategic about who I meet, when I meet them, and how much time I spend doing it. And it's okay. Fewer connections, like Dr. Hachach-Haram was talking about, fewer connections, but more meaningful connections is a great approach for introverts.
We are running up on time, but I want to give space to Monica and Annalisa to make comments. Monica, did you have anything you wanted to add? I know you are a natural introvert.
Thank you. Dr. Wall, what you just shared really resonated with me. And I am on social media, but I'm not one to post often on it. It's typically an article if I do. But what I do love to do on social media is read other people's posts and encourage them and support them. And so, like you mentioned, like typing up comments that would be encouraging them. And Ayushi, you had mentioned as well, when people are, have milestones that they've achieved, or I'm sorry, Annalisa, I believe that might have been you as well, who mentioned when, people have achieved things, make sure that you encourage them, applaud them, way to go that you did this. I love doing that. I mean, there's so much negativity out there in social media. So to put something positive out there and encourage people, I feel is doing something good in the world. But at the same time, it's planting deposits in that person because they're, I'm sure, appreciating the encouraging, kind words that someone is sharing with them and building that relationship even more. So that's how I approach it with the soft touches is, commenting in a kind way on people's posts.
Excellent. And last but not least, Annalisa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think just going off with what Monica said about kind of the soft touch on LinkedIn, just simple like celebrate or even heart the love on someone's milestone or news that they shared, that goes a long way. And if you feel kind of shy to provide actual text comment, then send that person a private message. Just say, hey, I saw that you posted X, Y, and Z. Awesome, way to go. I think just something short and simple can definitely go a long way. And that's something that maybe you could do just a couple times a week. As simple as that.
Excellent. Thank you. Small touches, small soft touches in DMs, on comments. Little things matter at the end of the day. Something that was mentioned earlier is joining these small groups. I've met a lot of connections doing things with people that I have like side passions with, either with art or hiking in the local community. And I've have found connections through that as well. That's been helpful for me as a fellow introvert. So we are at the end of our time, and I want to thank everyone for your practical tips and sharing your lived experiences, your insightful and very much inspirational discussion tonight. And we don't have any more time for more questions, but by all means, again, of Social Capital, reach out to these panelists, to the individuals here tonight. However, before we conclude tonight's event, and on behalf of Device Alliance, our annual women's event is to spotlight women who lead, inspire, and motivate others to achieve greatness. And by all means, you all have definitely achieved that at some point, and I'm absolutely sure will continue to. So for your contributions and inspiration tonight, for the next generation of medtech leaders, we want to offer and award each of you an honorary lifetime membership to Device Alliance. And we hope that we can continue to serve as a community for you to build and leverage that social capital for your success through life, career, as well as through your business. So congratulations and thank you all for your participation. In conclusion, so Device Alliance aims to be a resource for you all as our community to generate that social capital, whether you're panelists or not, just attending here. We hope that we are able to serve you in that way. And I'd like to just leave you all with a final quote from Helen Keller, which is, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Thank you all for attending tonight, and we hope to see you at our next events, our future events. So good night to everyone, and thank you for your time.